In today's film we are going to talk about the ultimate ways to travel Poland for cheap. Huh?
You could say cheap. David thinks that cheap sounds rude and insulting, and I tell him that that's what people are going to search for.
So be it.
It's not rude.
Hi everyone, in today's vlog we are going to talk about the ultimate ways to travel Poland for cheap. Did I make it in 8 seconds? That's what I learned yesterday. Blondie did some research, and now it's not only the millennials. It's not only the millennials, but it's also the Jay-Z's that we have to talk about. The generation of
Jay-Z's.
Yeah.
What? This is not a rapper generation. Generation Z.
Generation Z. That's
not
it.
Jay-Z.
We have to talk to
You
the.
sound like such an old person. Let's talk about those Jay-Z's. You know, we gotta figure out this new generation of Jay-Z's.
I feel like an old person
What about
because
the Beyoncés?
I feel like an old person because we just had millennials as our problem to solve, and now there's new generation of the Jeezys or whatever. and we have to worry about them. But anyway, we have to worry about that generation, and this is where we're getting at. Their attention span is 8 seconds.
There's an eagle. There's an eagle.
That's
eagles.
A good sign, because
Look
we're
at
gonna
them.
talk about Poland.
Did you see there's 2 eagles?
They're
right
so
there?
far away, I can't get them.
2 bald eagles. Look, it's David and Blondie.
Where are they?
Blondie's definitely the one in the front. She's the most bald.
They're over there. Maybe you can see them.
Open the door! It's cold. It's cold, David. Let me in.
Okay, so anyway, we're going inside this Airstream because it's a cold and wet and unpleasant day outside today. Even though it's sunny right now and it looks pretty, it's not that great outside, and therefore we're going to sit inside this Airstream and talk to you guys about the ultimate ways to travel Poland for cheap. Okay, very affordable ways to travel in Poland by David and Blondie. Here we go.
Number 1, getting a flight to Poland can be extremely affordable.
So wait, before you begin, as much as a lot of our previous videos were addressed to the Polish audience, I guess this one is also addressed to people from here or basically anywhere else who want to travel into Poland and spend some time over there. Poland is an extremely attractive country. It has a lot to offer. There's like many places and many ways to spend great time in Poland, and I think it's getting more popular. Do you have that feeling?
I told you that a European vacation to Americans is very fancy seeming and kind of like a bucket list item. And that's why I feel that traveling to Poland is a very good way to get your first taste of Europe, because it's so affordable. It's absolutely cheaper than going to someplace like Florida, because everything is so much more affordable, and people would look at a European vacation as a very difficult to get to destination, that it takes a lot, but it doesn't take that much at all, and in fact it can be cheaper than a trip within the United States.
Right, so...
Sorry, I used that word cheap again.
No, that's fine.
Another thing to consider is the exchange rate in Poland versus the dollar versus the Polish zloty, or Polish dollar, whatever you want to call it. Poland does not use the euro, which has a closer exchange rate to the dollar. It uses the
Polish currency, zloty.
It uses that. And the current exchange rate is $1 to $3.42 Polish dollars.
It was even higher. It was even better for us when we
like
were
1
there
to 4.
In 2017 in September and October. It was around 3.8. So it was almost 1 to 4.
Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind as well. It's not just that things in Poland are cheaper. They are. Food is cheaper in Poland. But in addition to that, the dollar exchange rate is going to make it so much easier for you to afford different things in Poland than if you were to do those same things here in the U.S.
So, getting there.
The way that we got there for such an affordable plane ticket was through Kayak. You said that our plane ticket was the cheapest you've ever purchased to get to Poland.
Yes, it was $550 per person.
You can't even get to freaking California for that.
And I know a lot of people use different services online. Kayak is my favorite because it monitors a lot of different websites, and you can set up an alert, and they also do sort of predictions. So they show you the trend and how the price was shaping for the past few weeks, months, whatever, and they tell you whether you should buy now or is it a good idea to wait a little longer. And most of the time, I would say like 90% of the time, they're dead on with that advice.
Didn't you say they recently added a guarantee?
Yes, so this is also a cool thing. I was recently looking because obviously we want to come back to Poland as soon as possible, hopefully in May. And right now when you set up an alert and let's say you decide to buy, they tell you to buy, right? So they're watching those trends, the price is falling, and they say buy now. We stand behind this. If you buy now and the price drops in the future below the level for which you bought the ticket, we will refund you the difference. I mean,
that's incredible.
You can't go wrong with
No.
that. I don't think it.
So-
I don't know if there's any other website out there that does this. If there is, I want to know about
So
it.
it's basically a guaranteed way to get the cheapest possible plane ticket to wherever you want to go.
Yes, absolutely.
We were just getting email alerts because obviously you want to go to Poland, so you signed up for email alerts and it told you about this incredible price. And it happened to be at a really great time of year, so that might be another point. The most affordable time to go to Poland, from what you've discovered, is probably around this time of year.
So, the most, I would say the best time to go to Poland is right after New Year's. So, like right now, every time I did it in the past.
But you mean affordability-wise?
Yes.
Not necessarily.
Plane ticket wise.
Overall, though, people have to decide if they want to be there for that type of
I mean,
weather.
overall, the time where we went in the fall, it was like the break of September and October, is probably one of the best times because the weather, we were lucky with the weather. It was really beautiful. It's not too cold yet. It's definitely not hot anymore. But you could also aim at like May, June, because that's probably the best weather to go to Poland. Summer is of course also good, but it can get hot and humid sometimes. Not
This
as
was-
much as here.
Definitely my favorite trip because it was a little cold, but it wasn't incredibly cold. So you and I were both happy weather-wise, and I got to see what it looked like with grass and trees and beautiful flowers and everything, not just snow
Yeah,
and
because every
death.
time we went before was pretty much in winter.
Yeah.
So the gist of it is, if you use services online like Kayak or some other websites that monitor the prices, you can get to Poland from USA for less than you can travel from East Coast to West Coast of USA most of the time.
Even to Colorado,
Yeah.
when we were looking at Colorado flights, they were completely out of the realm of possibility for us financially.
It does depend on the time of the year, and we're not going to be talking about details of airline price hunting. Like there are some other tips, you should always book on Tuesday or something like that. But in general, if you set up an alert with Kayak and respond to those, like when you get an email, you react to it, then chances are good you're going to get the best possible price.
As far as getting there, the other part is we rode around the country in your parents' car, but you have to rent a car or travel through train or buses. But you said you believe renting a car is the best way.
I would say so. Either finding someone in Poland with a car who would be willing to drive you around, or even several people. It's not always easy it's not easy for an average person to do that, but use your contacts, 6 degrees of separation. Some of your friends will know someone in Poland who's going to be willing to help you out. I think using trains is not a great idea in Poland anymore. The train network is not as good as it used to be. Polish people can chime in here and confirm what I'm saying or disagree with me. I'm looking forward to your opinions. From my own experience and from what I heard, the trains are not as safe anymore. There's a lot of problems with the train network. They don't really run on time. They take a very long time to move short distances for some reason. So the train communication is just not as good as it used to be. I would not recommend that. There are intercity buses. I don't know much about them. I don't know how well they run, how safe they are. I don't think they're very dangerous. I think they're definitely safer than trains. And if you stay within a city, especially big cities, buses seem like a good idea. Car is still the best if you can afford to rent a car. Car rentals are not the cheapest in Poland. They're kind of comparable to the prices here, but they're also not extremely expensive.
Another thing that you need to consider when you go to another country, and we're talking about Poland, is how are you going to communicate with your loved ones and family back home? Of course, Poland has plenty of free Wi-Fi all over, doesn't it, David?
Yes.
And all of the places that we stayed at and hotels, they all had Wi-Fi, as I
So
recall.
you can survive on
Yeah.
just using the Wi-Fi on your phone. Put your phone in the airplane mode, never use the phone network service, be only on Wi-Fi. You can survive like that. But
we use AT&T. We called about an international plan, and it was going to be something like $130 per person. So instead of doing that, what we decided to do is to bring an old cell phone that we had to Poland and put a new SIM card in it, which meant we just tethered off of that phone for Wi-Fi. So we used this phone, we carried it with us everywhere, and we used it as our internet base. And the cost of the SIM card that we purchased for this phone was how much, David?
it was ridiculously low.
It was like $4, which is just, to me, the most insane thing about our trip to Poland.
And
$4 for, we have to be clear, it's not for like 4 gigs. It was $4 for 100 gigs of data. We've never had 100 gigabytes on any plan, and we've spent like so much money on our cell phone
So
plan.
that is strange. 100 gigs per month. So it was impossible to use all that stuff, even if we watched videos all the time, all day long. And it was just an amazing deal. So we talked about this before. We talked about it in another video that you guys are encouraged to watch, of course. But it's important to mention it here because it's a part of the expense that you have to consider going to any country. So now we're going to get to the accommodations, which is also very important. You're going to visit a new country, you need to stay somewhere overnight. If you don't have friends and people that will welcome you to their house, you have to use hotels. Overall, this place was nice and clean inside. The outside looks pretty inviting. It has a large parking, a garden area, and I would give it a pretty good rating. Or something that is called agrotourism in Poland, which is a great idea because
Agritourism is something that your parents told us about, and it basically sounds like Airbnb mixed with farmhouses or something, but it's basically bed and breakfast is what our summary of and our experience of it was.
So, one thing that we have to mention here, agrotourism was born as a way to enjoy country living in Poland. It wasn't meant to be in big cities. I think the term has expanded a little bit right now because it is considering sort of private residences turned into bed and breakfast type of hotels in smaller cities. Originally, agrotourism included a lot of additional activities like, you know, canoeing on the mountain river and milking cows and walking with the mountain people and their sheep and just experiencing the real country life in Poland.
But they don't do that anymore?
I think they do it. I think they do it in a lot of places.
But they don't all have to do.
But I think the term agrotourism now has expanded a little bit.
So these are all including breakfast, and the cost varied for us for different ones, for different locations, if they were more rural or closer to cities. And what were some of the costs?
We'll tell you about a few specific ones that were on our route through Poland. Bocianówka place in Baranów Sandomierski, which was our first night, was 300 Polish currency, polskich złotych, for 4 of us. And that included the night. We had 2 different rooms. Mm-hmm. We were in our own room, my parents were in their room, and there was a breakfast included. So that, after doing all the conversion and everything, comes to around $15 per person.
$15 per person.
You cannot possibly find a place to stay in US for $15 a person.
Not that you'd want to stay in. Maybe under a bridge somewhere.
I don't think there are any places for this price.
They are maybe like hostels or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you sleep with like 18 other people in the
room. Or
room.
maybe rooms on Airbnb, not the whole place. I don't know.
There are rooms for $15?
Probably.
Oh, wow.
But,
Anyway,
I mean, even campgrounds here in the U.S. are more expensive than that, and they don't include breakfast.
Yeah, that place had pretty good standard. It was really nice to stay in. It was actually beautiful, and it's also an experience because this place is very specific to the local area.
That's so cool about Poland and this trip that we did was it was true immersion into the local culture.
Immersion.
It was. It was true immersion into the local culture. It wasn't going to the city, staying in a hotel, and going to the basic tourist spots that the internet tells you to go to. It was true immersion into how these people live, what the houses look like, the food they're all eating, we walked through that little town and we got to see what the town was like, saw Ted walking down the street, Fred the little dog running along.
It wasn't Ted, it was Marian.
Marek. Zbigniew.
Yeah.
One thing we do have to mention, though, we absolutely cannot talk about how affordable it is to stay in these places if you don't talk about my favorite place that we stayed.
Okay.
And that was Grodzic Castle. Because it was how much per night, per person?
So Grodzic Castle for, again, 4 people, 2 different rooms, dinner, supper, and breakfast the next morning was 300 polskie zloty altogether. So again, that comes to about 15 American dollars per person.
Isn't that insane?
By that exchange rate when
So,
we went.
$15, and say it again what it included. Lodging, dinner, and supper.
Yes.
That's incredible.
And breakfast the next day.
And we stayed in this freaking crazy castle that was built in the 1100s in this beautiful area on top of a volcano. I mean, you absolutely could not find something like that in the United States.
In terms of the places where we stayed for the rest of the trip, we're not going to talk specifically about each and single one of them, but it's worth mentioning that the most expensive one where we stayed was 360 Polish zloty for 4 of us for the night with breakfast, and that place was close to Warsaw, so it was like 30 kilometers outside Warsaw, very easy to get back to the city and get out of there. So the average price was around 340, which would be around $25 per person per night, including breakfast. What was your impression of the breakfasts?
So the best breakfast we had was at Moshna Castle. Absolutely. And you said that was $8 a person?
Yeah.
And this breakfast was incredible. The best breakfast we had. But all of the breakfasts were good. They all have very wholesome... I mentioned this in my video about what I love about Poland. All of the breakfasts had very wholesome ingredients, and you can definitely see that this is what Polish people eat. Because here in the U.S., I feel that you could go to this restaurant and it has this type of food, and this one is going to have this type of food. But in Poland, you can see that the basic breakfast is some type of a meat, some type of a sausage, the cheese.
There's always several types of bread.
Yeah, some type of bread.
Eggs.
Exactly. So it's like open-faced sandwiches and very whole ingredients, not a lot of mush. I would say, this is what I would say, there were not casseroles in Poland that I saw at these restaurants. It was all very whole food, so there was no mystery as to what was in your food. What was in your food was what you put in your food. As far as agritourism and where we stayed, though we stayed in agritourism places most of the time, which were arranged by David's parents, we also did stay in one Airbnb, which you said seems to be better for bigger cities like Gdańsk, where we stayed.
I feel like Airbnb is, of course, popular in Poland, and a lot of people rely on it. My favorite way of staying outside the big cities was agritourism because it was even less than Airbnb.
It included breakfast.
Yes, you can find good deals on Airbnb, but usually they don't include breakfast. And I feel like Airbnb works well in big cities.
I feel like the trick is that agritourism is almost somewhat of a local way Polish people travel, and Airbnb is priced knowing that these are Americans coming over with American dollars. So Airbnb is more expensive, and agritourism is priced to be affordable for Polish people, which brings me to another point that when we were looking at these agritourism websites, many of them were only in Polish. Some of them didn't even have websites. They just were in a list and you had to call. So I do believe that the language issue could be a barrier. You might want to have a Polish person help you set up some of these.
Polish
person. You might want to have a Polish person help you set up arrange some of these houses, because I think there could be a language barrier there.
There could be a language barrier the farther you get from big cities. I feel like in all big cities it's pretty easy to communicate in English. You're not going to have any problem. But when you get to those more rural areas, the farther you get into rural country, the less English-speaking people you will find.
When you're in Poland, now you have to decide what you're going to do. Maybe the tickets to get there were cheap and the hotel to stay at is cheap, but you're worried once I get there, everything's going to be more expensive and that's where the money is going to be eaten up. But even still, that's not true, because we went to many, many tourist locations and they were all as well incredibly affordable. I wrote down some prices of some of the places that we went and their costs. So Grojec Castle, just to visit, just to look around and not stay there, it's about $2.92 per person. Malbork Castle, which was the most expensive ticket I found to tour Malbork, which includes an audio tour and I think a guided tour or something like that, was $8.63. Museum that we visited in Gniezno was only $1.50 per person. The tower that we went up in Warsaw, which we got this beautiful view of the whole old city area, was 25 cents per person. So when I'm telling you that these tourist locations are cheap, I mean cheap beyond what you could possibly imagine. You can't even ride you can't ride a freaking carousel in the US for 25 cents. You can't. And we went through that whole museum and a woman walked us around the museum and we watched this video about Polish history and it was $1.50. It's crazy, the difference. And it's free to see many beautiful places. A lot of stuff that we saw and didn't cost anything.
Even bringing souvenirs back, you felt like would be a lot less than, again, if you went to, any tourist city in the US, right?
Absolutely.
There was a lot of local
T-shirts, local
stuff,
crafts.
like even, the Amber Works in Gdańsk, T-shirts, any local stuff, local crafts and arts.
Foods.
Paintings.
Foods are incredible. Oh yes, paintings are incredibly affordable. We saw they had a craft market in Warsaw and there were beautiful paintings by the artist sitting right there. Very, very affordable for souvenirs. Something you need to consider when you tour another country is the cost of food, because you're very likely not going to have a kitchen, although we did have kitchen in some of these places, but you're not likely to have a kitchen, so you're probably going to be eating out quite a bit. And the food in Poland, just in Polish dollars, to Polish people, is very much more affordable than the food here for some reason. I'm not sure why that is. So when you take that into account, that it's cheap, it's affordable in Polish dollars, and translate that to American dollars, it means it's incredibly affordable to eat at even very, very nice restaurants.
So again, we talked about more particulars of this, listing some restaurants in all our Polish videos and in video where Blani talks about her favorite things in Poland. So we're going to refer you back to those. But in general, there's a lot of restaurants and food on a really nice high level. The food is delicious, and you'd be super surprised, positively surprised, how little it costs to eat, with another person or even 4 people. And when you start translating it all back to what eating out costs in the US, you're like really positively amazed.
So on average, we would say, through calculating after you get there, not counting the plane ticket to get there, you're going to spend about $100 or even possibly less per day. That's not including souvenirs and whatever you might spend money on, but just to be in Poland, to stay there, to have food, and to see a few things even, it's probably going to be about $100 per day trip.
I mean, it's of course a rough budget, and your actual cost may be a little bit less or possibly a little bit more depending on what you do exactly. You can live lavishly in Poland if you want to and spend a lot more, but you could probably also get around for a lot less per day. With $100 in your pocket per day, you can have comfortable, nice time traveling around and seeing a lot of places and eating well.
Per person.
Yeah. So the last remark is, you feel like it's very helpful to have a Polish person assisting you with that travel, right?
I do feel like that's probably one of the things that's holding people back from visiting Poland more, because it is an amazing country. It is beautiful. it's an amazing European vacation, which Americans find something that's often on their bucket list. But I do feel that many of the websites and many of the information things that you need to know about getting around in Poland are somewhat difficult to find, because especially the agritourism sites are often in only Polish. Some of the people in those more rural areas may only speak Polish. So would I do it alone without you? Maybe if you were also my husband and we like ganged up together and figured it all out. But it's definitely a lot easier if you have a Polish person helping you.
But do you feel comfortable enough to visit a big city in Poland?
Oh,
speaking
yes,
only
absolutely.
English?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wouldn't feel uncomfortable visiting the smaller cities, but if something went wrong, then it's not as easy to find somebody who could help you out as it would be in a bigger city.
Those were our tips for successfully traveling in Poland and having good time for less. Hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please let us know in comments, and of course, smash the subscribe button.
Smash it!
Smash it right now. We'll be back soon with another cool video. That's it for today. Thank you. Bye.
You might want to have a Polish person help you set up some of these.
Ow.
Stop laughing at me.